worked in a fitness model for a long portion of my existence. And a lot of that was doing functional exercise. And so when I wanted to create my chiropractic version, because if you go to a chiropractor on the streets, it's a completely different experience than you go one around the way. I noticed that there was a piece for me that was missing, that just adjusting the patient was fantastic. But when they left the table and they did something different for their health, I saw remarkable things happen. You know, I think I was telling a story to somebody, maybe one of you guys, but I had a woman who came in who I hadn't seen in about 6 months because she was feeling so good. And she said, do I look different? I said, yeah, you look like you lost weight. She goes, I lost 40 pounds. I go, how'd you do that? And she goes, I was listening to you at the table talking about the keto diet, and you referenced a guy named Dr.Eric Pirrone, which I try to, you guys know that I credit a lot of people at the table because I read a lot. And she went to his website and she started taking a test while she was sitting in my room, getting adjusted, and she just picked up on it and she stuck with it. She was down 40 pounds from one conversation she heard. Not even to her, which is kind of a remarkable part. So that's kind of what got me back into going, I gotta get these back to going. They also serve as a nice part too, so eventually we'll be asking you guys to bring in significant others, just so they get to know the practice. This is going to be a branch of what Upstairs represents, which again, obviously chiropractic is based mostly about pain and discomfort. You guys probably know that by now. But not many offices build upon that. So really, I'm going to walk you through my history here at Brian, as soon as I get this thing going, so I'm even going to the point where I can't hit project on this thing. So let's switch slideshow. There it is, slideshow. Beginning. All right. Let me do one more thing. There we go. The one thing about Bluetooth, it's like my knew this already, but it's going to have a little bit of sound delay on here. Probably is a little too low. Very good anyway. So right along. I'm sorry, guys. All right, so this one's going to go back to Staples. 3 years later, right? I'll turn that there for you guys. All right, that should be connected. So cool. Real quick, go there, and then we go back to our start here. Like I said, back there, and this one here is a start projection to make sure from the beginning. Good. All right, so what I'm going to do is just kind of project that there. Like I said, I apologize, but if you can see the screen, that's great. If you can't, it's me talking anyway for the most part. Would you mind if you take one of these? You guys can fill those out. No need if you guys don't want with the name and number, which I have you guys ready, but you can fill it out. We are really at the end giving you that guys access to get into our app. Terry's actually already in the app that we have developed out. So it's one thing we're trying to work with, I'll show you guys at the end. But I'm going to come up with the idea of how we got to this ResNOlutions. I'm not sure if you guys know, and it's funny because when we began putting these workshops on, Colleen, who was my office manager prior to, she was like, what is your mission up there? Like, what are you looking to do with that office? And it was funny she said that to me because the whole time in my mind, I'm still in my old practice in New Hope where we had all this other stuff going on. And I'm like, I want to do a lot. And she's like, well, where are we going to start at? And I said, we're going to start back to where I started, which was 30 years ago. So a lot of you guys don't know my chiropractic story, but I started getting adjusted when I was 17 years old. And I got adjusted because it was convenient to me and it was free, be honest with you. And it was because there was a chiropractor at the gym in Newtown where I was working at as a front desk guy. He started working on me. Now, at the time, I was studying to be a personal trainer because that was my passion to work with people. I always knew that from the beginning. I wasn't much of a student coming out of high school because I didn't really have passion or purpose. I have a lot of other reasons on that I can tell you guys about. I won't bore you. But for me, it was I just didn't have the drive. And so getting into fitness was basically as a personal trainer. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I worked in that field for, at that gym particularly for 4 years until finally my chiropractor who was adjusting me, Dr. Thompson Giorgio of Newtown, said, man, you're one of the smartest cats I know. I was training him as a personal trainer, training a chiropractor, and I was training a medical doctor from St. Mary's, and he's like, you should go to chiropractic college. And I was rubbed between two heart spaces because guess who I was training? His friend went to DO. DO was like, no, go to DO school. There's one right here at PCOM in Philadelphia. And I'm a Philly guy. I grew up in Northeast Philly, moved to Richboro, Bucks County area when I was in my teens. So I went and looked at both styles of practice, and I saw the DO's practice. Good practice, busy practice. He wore his white coat, he walked in the room, he came back out of the room 5 minutes later. Pretty informal for the most part, but that's unfortunately what medicine kind of gets wrestled into sometimes. And his overall just demeanor in the practice was very lab coaty. You know, it was very scientific, it was very down the line. He made a good living, obviously. He was a general practitioner. He did pretty good money for owning his own practice because, you know, back then people actually owned their own practices. You don't see that anymore, by the way. Everybody gets owned by, you know, St. Mary's or Upstairs, which they're great guys, by the way. I'm not bashing them, just that business is in a different spot. But I went to my chiropractor office when I was 22, and I walked in, and everybody was like, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing?" You know, he's talking to his patients who are walking out. They're talking to his sister who's running the front desk, and they call him Dr. Tom, or Dr. Lieberman was the DO. You know, he was white tie. He came in wearing what I'm wearing, so I kind of mimic what I do off of him, because that's what we do with mentors. You know, we kind of mimic ourselves. And so he's the one that really showed me right away what I wanted to be, because I love the connection. You know, I love the idea that he created relationships and fostered those relationships, and he got to watch things happen over time. Again, it's a lost art in what I see out there now when it comes to it. We're going to kind of lay language that to a little bit. But how we came up with ResNOlutions. So, no lie, this morning, I'm adjusting one of my patients in the order. He's super funny. I'm telling you my story about ResNOlutions. And I want to start out by saying I started selling gym memberships when I was 17 years old. I did that as side work on top of my personal training, because it put an extra $5 per sale in my pocket. That's all they paid us. So it wasn't like we were like car salesmen heckling. But if I sat at that front desk after working a long day from like 5 until 8 o'clock, I could make an extra about $50 selling 10 memberships in January. It was great. It was easy money. You know what I mean? I loved it, because I could talk to people and I'd show them around. And like, here, and by the way, not to brag, I should be on camera for this. I was Mr. Pennsylvania light class when I was 18 years old. I was on TV as a competitive bodybuilder at 18 years old. It was funny because it was matched up next to the Oscars. And you guys remember the old boxes where you had 3 selectors and you had the buttons to push down? That's how far we're going back. If you were on the up one and you hit the 3rd button in, that was like some random local channel. There I was on TV. If you moved it down 1 notch, it put on the Oscars or whatever it was at the time. It was funny. So a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, I saw you in your underwear." I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." So that's the point where I was at. So I was very dedicated to what I had to do. So anyway, I want to kind of start out with this, because it's going to kind of lead into what I want to start with you guys on. And yeah, this. Everything else works accordingly. Let's see. There you go. You guys familiar with Friends? You guys can hear?
I want to quit the gym. You want to quit?
That's me.
I want to quit the gym. You realize you won't have access to our new full-service suite spa. I want to quit the gym. Dave in the membership office, Am's quitters. Excuse me, are you a member? Me? No. Sorry, members only. I want to quit the gym. Okay, man. Be strong. So, are you a member of any gym? No, and I'm not going to be, so you can save your little speech. Okay, no problem. Could you come here for a second? Hi, I'm Maria. Hey, so did you quit? No, I almost did. Couldn't leave Russ there without a spotter. So you joined the gym? And that's funny, why?
All right, so when he told me this morning, I was talking to the patient. When he told me this morning, I'm like, "Oh my God, I gotta go find that," because this is actually how we came up with this talk. And again, I'm gonna run through here. Oh, there we go. Shoot, skip it over now. Okay, leave it for now. So we came up with ResNOlutions because what I experienced from 17 to 22, mostly in the sales part of that, was the idea of what ResNOlutions presented to the marketplace. It's really just a good sales tool, honestly. It really comes down to that. It's almost like what say Valentine's Day can be. It's just kind of an added benefit. You know, they kind of create a moment for people to think about reflection on themselves, and they basically harness it for their own advantage. So the reason why we selected ResNOlutions was because I'm not a big resolution guy, because Blue Monday was yesterday in the gym business. That's the 3rd Monday in January where people come back in, like Ross and the other guy's name, I forget his name. Ross come in and they want to quit the gym. And we know right away because they were dressed just like them. Because you're like, why are you guys coming in dressed in their work clothes? And it was Blue Monday because if they quit at that time, typically within the state of Pennsylvania, you have 7 days to get out of any contract, 30 on most contracts in fitness, as long as you have a medical necessity of some sort. And so they always come in with like a medical need on that side, and they would say, what do we need? Get out of it. And it would just be a medical doctor note, that kind of thing. So again, by the way, what Blue Monday meant to us, why it was Blue Monday, was because any membership sales were not paid until the middle of February, because he gave us that 30-day gap, just in case they quit when we got paid for it, we wouldn't have to owe the money back to the gym. So we literally would have to wait for that time period. So every other month was like, you're getting paid, which was nice on that side. So as a youngster, that's what we saw on that side. So what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and meet this guy real quick and put him through. The other thing is, it's also gonna turn into where Brian met me, because one of the things about bringing Brian on board is not by a mistake. Brian and I have had a relationship now as friends and contemporaries, 20, what was that, 14, 15, somewhere in that area probably, maybe a little later. But the reason why Brian got to meet me was because I was practicing in New Britain, at a chiropractic practice in New Britain down in Bucks County, and a gym locally called Cornerstone. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. It's a chain in Bucks County. There's 3 of them. There's one in Warrington. There was one in Warrington. There was one in Doylestown and one in New Hope. So they're looking for a visionary, somebody to basically come in and retrain all of their trainers and implement a system to keep their people in the gym. That's what their role was. So they actually had a system where they would pay trainers an hourly rate to be floor time, which is unusual. Like most gyms you go to, you don't have a trainer walking around. Brian was a lead in that setting, so he had people under him that would basically walk up and say, hey Mike, what are you working towards today? What are you working towards? How you doing with that? Oh, let me suggest some stuff for you, right? So they contracted me to basically create programs to keep people into fitness for at least the first 30 days, if not 90. And so that's kind of how Brian and I met, was because literally we were angling towards knowing that people were going to join and then possibly quit. And to go with that gym, and the guy, Jim Bishop, the owner over there, fantastic guy. You always know a gym's gonna be a good gym when the guy's not a workout buff, like overall. You don't walk in, the guy looks like he just stepped off a big bodybuilding stage. You know it's gonna be a good gym because he's a business guy, and this guy, and again, I'm speaking to the gym great guy in that sense. Like, right away, he cares about the community. He did a lot of outreach, a lot of reaching out in that part of it. But my whole goal with that program really came through in this talk today for you, because what he recognized, what I recognized, that when people were suffering in their community. So, in a typical American marketplace, that only 14% of people participate in any kind of exercise whatsoever, 14, which is a pretty low number overall, kind of coming through. So what I'm gonna do is, as this runs through, because I don't wanna hit a button because it's gonna back through, is I'm gonna talk about some of the hurt points first, because it's really what sets the tone for what functional life is gonna be, as we develop it out into the marketplace. Skip ahead. Get out of this one. There we go. So here you guys do that. Skip over. There we go. So note to self next time, don't use technology. And just back out of that real quick. I'll skip over this slide. There we go. All right. So one of the things I start out with, again, I do very Socratic method, so bear with me. And again, I know you guys well, so you guys don't mind, so I'll ask you guys questions too. Hang on a second. Let me skip to this slide. And start from the current side. There we go. So my question starts out with, is Socratically, do we live in a healthy or a sick country? What do you think?
Sick.
Yeah, right? What do you think? Sick, right? Sick?
Oh.
Oh, no. By the way, that's my partner, Katya. She's a medical doctor. She's a pediatric doctor over at CHOP. It's very interesting. Her and I have been together for now 4 years. And so typically medical and chiropractic is like water and oil. They don't mix sometimes. So which is interesting. We're like healthy peanut butter and jelly, I guess. We stay together for the most part. But there's definitely some times where I wish there was a podcaster following us, because it goes back down to philosophy and how I see things and she sees things. And we have to come to agreement that we just disagree on certain things and be okay with that without making things go into something else, because it gets a little disty sometimes. But anyway, we can all agree with that. But my question for us is, again, why do we know that, and then why are we making any changes? And that was really the frustrating part for me with COVID. Again, not to anchor back to that, but COVID was the first time I really noticed that. The number one thing that people would tell me for so many years, and again, keep in mind, this is going back to 17 years of age. I'm 48 now, so 31 years in fitness. What was the number one reason why people didn't get healthier? What was the number one reason? What do you think? They didn't exercise, they couldn't eat more food. What do you think? What was the number one reason?
Too busy?
Time. Thank you. Absolutely, time. And it was interesting to me, what frustrated me was that, what did people get over COVID for the most part? Some time, which was interesting, right? So that's really why, like I said, I went through a lot of struggles internally. So I'm like, well, listen, guys, we're not in a good, healthy environment. Can we get better now? And so again, we looked at some of the numbers I was kind of bring up briefly, because I want to start with the idea of some of the hurt points. But most people don't realize, but we lose, again, about approximately 40% of our nation dies from preventable lifestyle diseases. 40%, and that number is going up. And the scary part is we're starting to see it in our younger generations that they're starting to have some of the telltale signs that number is just going to keep going up. So really what I'm talking about today is what makes a person healthy. And again, we all can hopefully agree in this room, it's not a lack of medication, right? You don't see a person who gets healthier get more medication. It just doesn't happen. You know, again, again, my mom's story is that part where she was on 9 meds before she finally had the heart attack. 9 meds, you know, she still had it, and thank God she lived, so I'm not bashing medicine because I love what medicine did for her. But she wasn't living a vital life, you know. Some of the other her points, again, the leading factors, physical activity is the leading factor for that. Again, 14% of the population actually engaged in a workout. This one's saying it's the fourth leading cause of death. We all do live in a sedentary lifestyle. I know the majority of people that we do take care of, you guys were in that, you guys are in practice with me. If there's 10 people in a room, at least 7 sit for a living. 7 of them sit for a living. And so they're all going through the common stressors because one thing our ancestors didn't do was, guess what? Sit for a living. You guys might have heard me say that sometimes, is that the only chair that I recommend to a patient is a rock or a log. Have I ever said it to you? And the reason I say that is because, again, it's what ancestrally we sat on. It was so uncomfortable. You'd get up out of the chair, and by the way, you're more than willing to stand up anytime you want to walk around. I'm okay with that. It's not too bad. Some of the other stuff goes in some of our talks. I use these slides in the beginning of every one of them, which obviously Katya is finishing up a book right now, which is great because, again, as much as I get to go read, she reads as much as I do. It's called Hacking the American Mind.
I finished already.
She finished today. So Hacking the American Mind, great book to go read. It's written by a pediatric doctor. The interesting part about this guy is that he's retired, which we're starting to see that more doctors retire now, greater than ever. And they're typically the doctors that know a different system, that they know it could be better, and it's not getting better, so they're getting out or being forced out in some way. But it's interesting, I'm not mistaken, this guy's older,
Yep.
Retired,
Yep, pediatric endocrinologist in California.
and went to law school. So which is pretty interesting to see it from that perspective, because I give a lot of credit to that guy, because he's got a little bit more cojones to speak up a little bit, because what he goes off on, it may not be agreed by the American Medical Association or Pharma. So he has that audacity in that book. As a matter of fact, in the first chapter, he says to him, this might sound very conspiratorial, might be a conspiracy theory thing, but I'm telling you, it's hard data. And so I love when that starts out, because I know right away my buzzers go up, because I always feel like a conspiracy theorist, because I talk about things that get people healthy versus, you know, which is against that sometimes. But great book you guys want to do. But again, stress is that silent killer. One thing I really love anchoring back to, because most people don't realize this, but majority of studies, and we're talking like 99%, it's a high number, in evidence-based medicine is all done and geared towards educational university-based studies that are looking for the effects of pharma on human beings. That's all we're studying in healthcare right now, okay? The majority of studies, okay? So when you go to a Duke University and you're doing a study on health, guess what it's paid for by? Most likely a major pharmaceutical contingent, because again, it helps them with their development of the drugs. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's what we're studying now. And whenever you study darkness, what do you get more of? Darkness. When you study light, what do you start to see? More light, right? And it's kind of interesting on that part. But I want to show you guys real quick. There is a study out there, and again, it's an ongoing study, so these numbers have changed quite a bit. This was from the Archives of Internal Medicine back in 2009, but it has grown up. I checked into more ones, but I didn't want to change the slide because I'm not very tech savvy with changing this stuff. But this is the European Perspective Integration Study on Cancer. And so what this is it's a letter sent out to European Union members that live in Europe, and they basically, it's based on 500,000 people. It's a subjective questionnaire, like I'm gonna have you fill out in a second, okay? You're gonna fill that out for me. That's gonna be basically saying here, what do you do? Do you smoke cigarettes? What is your weight? What is your, blah, blah, blah. And they monitor that along the way to get to the point with death, and they kind of measure that on that side. So one of the questions is, what do we need to get healthy? And that's what today's all about. Because remember, resolutions in my world don't work because they're wishes. You wish something would happen, and there it's at. Most people, when they make those resolutions, they overshoot completely, and that's when Ross and those guys walk in, I want to quit. Well, because they bit off too much, right? And so we're going to kind of bring it back to that nutshell. So there's 4 simple behaviors I want you to remember to keep a long, healthy life, and I'll show you outcomes in a second. I'm going to read them to you since it's small. Number 1 was not smoking. That should be pretty obvious, right? We were talking earlier today about what the warning signs are on those cigarettes now. Have you ever traveled abroad? We were just in Curacao and went through duty free, and like that big poster board with a death sign on it over top of the cigarettes, like sitting in the duty free. Like if you're in this section, you're gonna die. You know what I mean? It's pretty remarkable. And they're still selling, people grabbing cartons by the carton, which is interesting on that part. And that was my mom's vice, which I won't go into today. But here it is: no smoking, 3.5 hours of exercise per week. Can anybody do the math and tell me how many minutes a day that is? If it's 3.5 hours in 7 days a week, 30 minutes a day. That's where it came from. Did you ever hear that before? It takes 30 minutes. It came from the study. So it's 3.5 hours per week. Keeping your BMI of under 30. So weight is a major factor when it comes down to how we live our lives. That number, when it goes over 30, increases our potential for all of the lifestyle diseases almost instantly. Now, the one thing I will bring back to the mission for Functional Life is it a weight loss program in a sense? Yeah, we want to see the weight go down, but more importantly, we want to see muscle go up, which we won't go into this too much, but one of our talks is going to be on sarcopenia and the effects, because most people don't realize, but the number one sign of aging in an aging model is sarcopenia, and that means loss of lean muscle. Now, most of the women in here probably heard of osteopenia, maybe guys have too, but most people don't realize, but sarcopenia always happens first, if you ever hear that. And by the way, I'm sorry to say, but it's not a lack of calcium. Calcium is a great building block for bones, but you have to create the building material, reason to get the building block to work. You know what I'm saying? We don't hear it sometimes. But anyway, as Ms. Terry knows, we do the in-body measurement here for body composition, because it is going to be important that as weight changes, should it come down? Yes, below 30. And by the way, guys, if I got on that right now, my BMI is close to 30. I'm probably 29, 30. But my muscle mass is at a point where it puts me at a better age level. And by the way, we do have the chart that shows on the line, if you're at a certain body fat percentage at a certain age, like right now I'm 48, but my body fat percentage is closer to a 41-year-old. So literally it's telling me I'm younger than I am based on that number. So my goal is always to be 10 years younger. Another great book is Peter Tia's book, Outlive. He talks about those numbers, to know those. Like, you always want to make sure that like your max VO2 and your body composition is always 10 years younger, because eventually your physiology is going to catch up, and that's what you kind of work towards. And the last one is eating a healthy diet. So again, the premise of this is, again, out of today, we're going to talk about some of these habits through reform. So 3.5 hours working out, BMI under 30, and then eating a healthy diet. Now, just so you guys, the healthy diet was defined as fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds, limited amounts of meat, moderate amounts of alcohol intake. Just so you know, I'm not a one-stop guy when it comes to nutrition. I've talked to many of you at the table. I've done through everything from paleo to zone to what else? Keto. I went OMAD for a bit, 1 meal a day. I still do subscribe to intermittent fasting, but I found out what worked for me, and that's why I recommend anybody finds out with nutrition. There's always need to find out about yourself and how it makes you feel. That's a whole different story. But here's the outcomes. This is the important part. I just said to you a second ago that up to 70% of Americans will die of lifestyle preventable disease in this next year. Of those, diabetes is one of the major killers. This 4 things here showed number-wise, 93% of diabetes was prevented, 81% of heart attacks were prevented, 50% of strokes, 36% of all cancers were prevented, and 14 years of age were added to your life. And that's those 4 things, like I just told you. So they're pretty impactful things. We just don't hear a lot about those. And the unfortunate part is that BMI number has not gone down, just so you guys know, in the past 20 years. In the old style, before we had the PowerPoint stuff like this, we used to have one where it was a graph from the CDC which showed obesity rates increasing as time went on, and it was almost like a zombie apocalypse. Just so you guys know, back in 1980, there was only 3 states with a BMI of over 30% or 30 on a BMI, and it was all in the South. It was like Mississippi, New Orleans, and it's interesting to see it just kind of spreads. Then this pocket kicks in, and then like Florida, California stay pretty lean for the most part, and then all of a sudden it's every state now in the state of the United States is at a 40% obesity rate coming back in through. So it's pretty high up there on the BMI side. But again, I wanted to bring that in because it kind of brings it back to what we're going to talk about today. We're all walking towards a cliff. I want to make that loud and clear. Okay, so what I present today is not going to be a guarantee that you're not going to go off that cliff. We're all going to get there. Some of us, unfortunately, are sprinting towards that cliff. And my question always to me was, if I had a loving person in my life and they knew I was walking towards a cliff, would I tell them they're doing that? That's where I go back to. Like, would I tell them, hey, you're going to that cliff pretty quick here? And the answer is, yeah, if I love you enough, I'm going to say it to you. And it takes a lot of ownership and trust and credibility to build up to that part. But I want to sit here and tell you real quick is that we're all getting to it, but like I said, some of us can slow down. And that's where everything we're going to talk about today is, how can we slow that process down? Again, it's not going to guarantee anything. Can you get hit by a bus? Yes. Do you have an Edna who smokes 6 packs a day and still is 103 years old? You do. It's okay. She's doing something else to get to that cliff less than we are. I don't know her, so I don't know what it is. But yeah, there's all these things justification-wise coming back and through. But my question always is that. And by the way, that's her doing yoga on a cliff in Sedona. So again, she not only not runs towards it, she literally just goes, hey, I'm going to do a nice little pose here. That's a beautiful, I lecture in Sedona. I did lecture in Sedona a couple years back. We were actually in Scottsdale. We went to Sedona for a couple of days. It was beautiful up there. If you guys get a chance to visit, it's absolutely gorgeous. Was that Subways?
No, that was not the Devil's Bridge. That was behind Oh my gosh, the cathedral.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. But again, her doing yoga on there on a rock, and I'm like, don't fall off. Okay, so I love this. So one of the premises, and just so you guys know my background, again, I've been in chiropractic for 20 years, 30 years in fitness. I actually created a company with another couple of doctors called 8 Weeks to Wellness Corporate Challenge, which was basically our attempt to go into corporations to get them healthy, which by the way is like you might as well bang your head into a wall. It's that difficult to change culture. There's a saying that came out of it was that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I would sit there in 2015 in my basement drawing up plans for corporate to come in there and change them. And my goal was what they call a high-tech, high-touch approach, which I got from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It wasn't in his book. Here's the cool part about the story. It was in the very back end. He leaves these little blurbs. He's passed on, by the way. But he left it in there in a little saying. And all it said in there is, high-tech will never replace high-touch. I get goosebumps when I say it. High-tech will never replace high-touch in how we do healthcare. I'm sorry. AI will help. Apps will help. All that stuff. But you need a human connection. And that's kind of where I'm hoping medicine goes to next, is they realize that. We've had these conversations about what pediatrics should look like, and it should look like the old school, where you know Dr. Gonzalez's family practice and you trust him, and he knows your grandma, because he was, you know what I mean? We need to get back to that part of it. But I'm gonna bring it back to where I grew up into. My first practice wasn't pretty. It was a chiropractic, insurance-based practice that went bankrupt within about 4 years. Lucky enough for me, I was already training on outside that for sports chiropractic, and I started CrossFit. So I was one of the first CrossFit affiliates in 2007. That got me notoriety in my field, in my area, because I was growing the CrossFit quicker than my practice, which was easy to do because people love fitness and they love the CrossFit stuff. But what had happened was I got bought out. So I had a doctor come in who was running a program called 8 Weeks to Wellness in his office, which is a chiropractic program with fitness, massage, nutrition, supplementing, everything in one shot for 8 weeks. Remarkable program, okay? And we did everything off of this slide right here. And what the slide says is illness, wellness, comfort zone, okay? So I know it's hard to read, and I apologize again, but again, diseases, multiple medications, poor quality of life, potentially becomes limited, and body has limited functionality, okay? My mom at the time was still alive. That was her, right away. She was on 9 meds, not happy, struggling through life, not where it was at. Where Optimal Health said 100% function, continuous development, active participation in life, wellness lifestyle, like participating actively in there. I want you to realize that this continuum is like one of those skateboards that you get on and it's got a wheel, you can lean one way, it goes one way, and you lean back the other way, it goes the other way. That's really how your health works. And some people are hardcore going this way, which is towards wellness, and some of us are hardcore pushing this way, going back to it. So I thought it was really impactful to kind of start out with that, because the resolutions we're going to talk about today and the changes are going to happen on that forum, which I want to kind of language out how we're driving those mechanisms. And my quest for today is to come out of this night with you having one tangible thing that you can do that's important on that piece of paper. We'll walk through the significance of that, so that each day going forward, you can start to build on that process going towards this angle. So what I'm saying to you is you don't have to jump into anything scary, like again, Boston's guy joined the gym, none of that stuff. I'm not gonna go too deep in this, but I will present on this with our next talks. But we talk about the 3 traumas, 3 T's. So there's traumas, thoughts, and toxins. That's a big chiropractic mantra. Every one of us in this room had traumas, thoughts, and toxins. So traumas are physical stresses, thoughts are emotional stresses, and toxins are biochemical stresses. I was talking to a woman I've been taking care of for 4 years now. She came in this morning. She's on her 2nd case of COVID, and she's already had flu B since like December. All right. Relatively overall, I don't think she's healthy. I know she's kind of personality. She's kind of a warrior. She's on the table talking to me. She goes, "Do you think I'm taking enough vitamin D?" And I was just like, "How much are you taking?" I talked her through a little bit, and I'm building up her trust, and I'm talking to her. And she gets up the table, and I finally look at her, and I go, "I got to tell you the truth." She goes, "What?" I go, "It's your job." She goes, "How did you know?" I said, "I can feel it in you." And she took on a job back in beginning of the year. She's a teacher in Philly. They paid her $80,000 to go down and teach in Philly, $80,000 to teach in Philly. And she goes, she can't stand it. She travels there crying. Her daughter, who I take care of, had to get her up in the morning for the first few weeks because she wouldn't leave the house. And she's going, "I don't know why I'm getting COVID twice. I don't know why I'm getting flu A twice." Well, guess what? That emotional toxin is just as bad as that chemical toxin, physical toxin of down in a fist of gin or something else. It's going to make you sick over time. It'll go improve. And biochemical stresses, again, it's just as bad again when we feed back into our bodies. So I want to kind of get to it. I love this picture. Okay, is that awesome? It's actually going to be one of our talks. One of my most requested talks in corporate when I would go out to them was on sleep. That was the most requested talk in sleep. When we do an HRA for the company, and we basically send out fillable data that we can come back to and say, "Hey, what are you looking for?" and sleep was the number one talk. And so I have a great talk, and that's my Zen Zebra. There's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It's a great book. Katya's currently reading the next edition, which is called Determined. Sapolsky. So great book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And we're going to have that talk probably sometime during the year. I'll let you guys know when that is. That's a really fun one. I just want to put it in to remind me, plus I love it because it's like a little Zen Zebra coming through, which I hope you guys leave a little more Zen today. I want you guys to take a second to fill out that habit questionnaire if you haven't already done it. The questionnaire is very straightforward. I'm basically asking you to grade yourself on the level of exercise, sleep, diet, stress. If you want to just jump to that first 6 on that side, that's fine by me. You don't have to fill out anything below that as far as the problems go, because I know all the problems. Yay! I know most of those physically on that side, but I want you to fill those out. They are going to be measured based off of 2 metrics, quantity and quality, meaning that you do this enough throughout the week. So if you do good sleep 5 days a week and you feel it's quality, like you feel restful, then I'm going to give you like an 8, just to give you some framework. If you drink water up to 8 glasses per day for like 6 days a week, I'm going to put you at 100, okay, 1 day out of the week. You know what I'm saying? Like just kind of put it in reference of like quality and quantity. Now, if you drink water for 1 day out of 7 and you drink soda and orange juice beyond that, then that's a whole different conversation. Now, one of the most important ones I want you to fill out is the general health one. The general health one really gives me an interesting idea about where you're at. There's 2 types of people in this world. There are idealists and there's realists. Have you ever heard that before? So ideally, I think I'm this way, but really, I'm not that way. Unfortunately for me, I saw that a lot in my mom's model, and I go back to her a lot because that's all I can anchor back to. But ideally, being on those 9 medications wasn't really convenient for her, but she felt like it was taking her to where she had to get to. If I had her read out this form, this is what it would have sounded like. She would have put down for sleep probably a 2. She would have put down for water, absolutely probably a 2. She would have put a 2 on everything. And then general health, guess what she would have put?
8.
Thank you. She would have put an 8, okay? So my question to you is, how can she be an 8? What do you think? She's ideally thinking she's there. She's ideally like, hey, I'm not dead. That was my mom's philosophy, by the way. I'm not dead. But matter of fact, in my household, if you lived past 54, you were considered old age. Because she has 13 siblings, and most of them were passed away by the time you hit 54. So with every year past 54, and by the way, she lived to be 79, she thought that she was living on borrowed time the whole entire time. So, but she would have said this form on that side of it. So the reason I want to have you fill that form out, let me jump to this one here and here, is because we're going to work on kind of deconstructing what's on there. Because I want all of you coming here with a wish. I do want that. I want every person here to wish themselves to be healthy, okay? But like I said earlier, the problem with the wish is if you don't put a plan next to it, you're not going to get anywhere, okay? So again, a goal without a plan is a wish. That was the saying. So a goal without a plan is a wish. If you create that goal. So your goal for me today is when you leave out of here is you take one of those numbers and you work towards those, and you can pick whatever one you want. We're going to put it through a whoop. You guys heard of whoop before? It's not that song, whoop, there it is. This is something I picked up over the past month. I liked it because it gave me different structure. Just so you guys know, one of my goals, you guys might notice about me, but I started 2.5 years ago, and I should finish up by December, is I want to be a black belt. So between my braces, my new truck I bought, and my karate, I pretty much lived my teen years again. Sweet! Overall, which is interesting. But my goal is to be a black belt. And the reason being for me was because I want to show myself, and more importantly my kids, that I can do it. You know, my daughter got me started, the typical part. She brought me in for a June free for parents. She quit 2 months later. I stayed on board. I actually signed up for the 36-month program, so I'm committed to this thing, and I'm at a brown white belt right now. The reason I also committed to it is because it forces me into stretching every night, which, by the way, if stretching was on there, I would have said, well, woefully, it's probably a 2. And in my real mind, I would know as a guy I should stretch more, but I wouldn't do it because it's just not sexy. I don't want to, you know what I mean? It's just not sexy. Like, honestly, like, if you go for a run, I feel great. I do it, I'm like, whoo, man, that was good. I push weight all the time. I was a 600-pound, just like Jalen Hurts. I was a 600-pound squatter. 595 was my max I got to when I won my max at 20 years old. Power lifted at the time. So that gave me a rush. But you put me in yoga class, ask Katya. Like, I'm like, dude, this sucks.
By the way, it's not true. I think it's super sexy to stretch.
Oh yeah, she thinks it. She thinks it is,
Sexy to
and
run.
she sways me towards the realism of it all.
Yeah.
But what really happens
Right.
to me was I couldn't take care of you guys. When I bought this practice, my back was bothering me bad. The reason why most chiropractors fail out of practice is, guess what? Ironically enough, that goes bad. Okay, so when I bought this practice, by the way, I still do my other practice. I was there at 6:45 this morning adjusting my patients. I added an extra 150 plus adjustments to my week on top of my 100 I'm already adjusting. So I'm in here adjusting 200, 250 people a week. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of bending over, guys. You see me, I'm always up and down, you know, and lately you see me walk out of here, I'm like this. Because I have a weird left knee swelling up, but I'm not blaming anything but the idea that I just want to get back to like more stretching and stuff. And I went to karate last night. But the reason I bring it up is because we're all in this pickle. I'm a human just like you guys are. And again, but one of my missions and statements for me is if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it with you along the way. And what I did was I made a choice and said, hey, listen, what's going to get me to stretch every day? And I go twice a week, at least at a minimum, in order to get my black belt. I go do it. Again, it's Kempo karate, so it's lower force. I know there's some other parts out there. Some of my friends make fun of me because it's like I wear the action karate gear. It's got the little shark on the back. You know, I went through all that stuff. As a matter of fact, the instructor said the other day, he goes, it's funny because it's harder for parents to get on the mat than it is for kids. Because parents are so locked into who they are. Like, you see them sitting over there, they don't want to leave out of that chair. Like, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me. You know, it's like, no, get on the mat, you know, and share that experience. But again, it worked me towards my mission, which again, like I said, is I want to be not part of that statistic, which I am because my dad died of throat cancer when I was 21. My mom passed COPD eventually when she was 79, but had every other disease possible. So that means my percentage based on medicine is almost 100% of me coming down with one of those, knock on wood. And I'm just saying, I want to prevent that as much as possible. But that list in there now, I want you to take a peek at it real quick. Notice any of the low numbers, just put a little star next to it. Just put a star next to it. So what we're going to do is kind of create a hierarchy. Now what I call these are linchpin habits. What I mean by that is that if you can get this one habit going, I found in 30 years of working with patients, other things started to work towards what we had to get to. I'm going to have to go forward, so I apologize. I'm going to get to this first. We're going to get there. But one thing about my brain, and Katya knows about this too, is I like things that sound sequential. Like I have my 3 C's, or I have my consistency, congruency, confidence, conviction. Like I thought of those processes because I see people go through that. They do something consistent. They measure it, it's congruent for them. They get confidence, and all of a sudden they're convicted. They stay with it. I saw that with my CrossFit gyms, by the way, because I would see miracles in a CrossFit gym, honestly, because they just put that much in there. But today for me was a moment, which is what ResNOlutions are all about, right? I want this to be kind of a moment for you guys if it can be. A moment is where you have a reflection part where you say to yourself, hey, listen, where am I at right now? The next one is motivation, and that one came down to, I was reading this book called Arate over the holiday, and he mentioned the word hope. Hope. H-O-P-E. It was such a weird little like recognition for me. It was like what hope means. It's really what you need to make something change. You need hope. You need to go, hey, I need hope here. Like I can't be fixed in a mindset that I'm going to be a victim of medicine or a victim of my lifestyle. I need hope. That's something I want to anchor back down and say, but motivation, do you have that want to change? The next one is momentum. Momentum plays such a huge factor, and this is why I'm going to go through this. What you saw with Ross and those guys in that little skit was they lost momentum. In the beginning of that, he said to himself, he goes, he's talking to other friends, he goes, I should be going 4 times a week. And they said, when did you start that? He goes, well, I should have started 1,200 workouts ago. Because he's been paying a $50 membership. That's the beginning part of that skit was. It's pretty funny. I didn't want to cut it. I don't want it being too long, but it was long anyway. But the point being is that they lost that momentum. And the last one is where I work into now is a movement. So there's another skit I was going to put. Thank God I didn't because the technology's killing me today. I've been struck out 0 for 3. It's a picture of a guy on a mountain dancing crazy. I'm not sure you ever saw this video. It's pretty remarkable. It's a heavyset guy, and he's got like beats in the background. He's on a beautiful festival somewhere, and there's people surrounding him, and he's just dancing crazy, and no one's coming to join him. And it's guy's voicing it over, and he's like, watch how a movement starts. And it's got this crazy guy, and all of a sudden, one guy walks up and just starts, like, we're talking like jamming out, like Fish concert, dead, somewhere. It was somewhere between like out there. And one guy joins, and then another guy joins. And before you know it, he goes, this is how the movement starts. And you see people coming down. And all of a sudden, the whole mountainside's dancing like that one dude started at that time. And I love that video because what I've anchored to for me is all that time I spent from 18 to 28 being a personal trainer and working one-on-one with people and hoping, and by the way, what training provides people is more of a psychologist to listen to and talk to and more of a friendship, which I enjoyed that part of it. But I also realized they look for inspiration, and guess what? Who didn't show up sometimes? Me. Because when you're 22, you know what I mean? It's hard to show up sometimes, like in full. You know, where I walk in and you're like, oh yeah, it's fun. 22 years old, you know. But here's what was the cool part: the movement that I felt was in the functional world, and what I saw with fitness. When I opened up that CrossFit gym, I started to realize there's something bigger out there than just what we were doing. And again, this is not to tout CrossFit because there's downside to CrossFit too, which we actually had a conversation on today, a little bit on that side. But what they brought to the mix for me is what you're gonna need out of this form is when you're done this, is a connection, someone to help support that along the way. Because this talk prior to this, back 6-7 years ago, was really based on The Power of Habit. You ever read that book? Power of Habit, good book by Charles Duhigg. He talks about 3 things. It makes it sound so simple. I'm like, oh, everyone's gonna hear this and leave out of here and be great. Cue, routine, reward. That's what he said. A cue, something to tell you to do something. A routine, something different, and then a reward. And then you're supposed to be something different. But what he lacked in that was follow through, connection. You know, how many times do you walk out of a gym or you walk out of a healthy situation, or my office, and life presents you with healthy options? More times than not. Would you agree on that part of it? That's why we started that first slide, we live in a healthy culture or not. But it's a really important part. So let's go back to the form real quick. So what I want you to do in order to create this next step for us is go ahead and look at that form, and then again, circle, do your best number. And what I want to do now is kind of go back to this slide right here, and keep it for that slide. And I want to let you know, right now, if that one is the lowest, is exercise, hold off, okay? Just put a question mark to it. If it's diet, hold off, put a question mark to it. The reason why I'm going to do that is because this is where most people start resolutions and fail dramatically. The reason they do this, and the reason why they fail, is because it's like trying to eat a whale in one full bite. It's very difficult to do. It's also anchored around a couple of really bad things that just don't need to be part of our change until they have to. The biggest one is going to be our scale. Right? If there's any piece of equipment you want to throw out of your house right away, is a scale. Because there's really, from a valid level, there's not much validity to weight gain. As a male, 200-pound male, I can lose 5 pounds and gain it back drinking water the next day. 5 pounds, and it's disheartening. And what it robs you of is momentum. When I talked about the momentum in there, coming back in through. The other reason is, it's enough of a change in 3 factors, which I always anchor back to: time, energy, and money. If you need something to stick, you have to handle all 3 of those things, okay? The only fixed thing in those 3 things is time. You have 24 hours. I told you why I was pissed off about COVID, because more people had more time to get healthy and didn't, because something was missing, right? It was the movement, by the way. Like, again, my humble opinion, next to Fauci should have been Jack LaLanne. Remember Jack LaLanne? He should have been up there next to Fauci, saying, hey, all right, he's done, I'm up. You know, and he runs up there and does his little skit about eating. By the way, Jack LaLanne, everybody knows who he is? All right, good. Great. He's still on YouTube, and his wife's still alive, just wrote a book. Elaine LaLanne is her name, honestly, to goodness, Elaine LaLanne. She's actually outliving him, which is really awesome, and she's awesome for fitness. She just wrote a book with a friend of mine. So if you want to read the book, that's a good one too. But what it comes down to is those things take too much, usually energy and money, which are valuable assets for us when it comes down to it. And the other part is it robs us of energy typically in the beginning, right? When you join a gym, is it easy? No, it's exhausting. Does it cost you money? Yeah. So 2 things are done, right? If you change your diet, is it easy eating, is it cheap eating healthy? The answer is no. But my return to that is being sick cheap? No, it's not. It's expensive, right? So that's a whole different, but remember, you can't get there until you get there, right? We talk about moment. I won't go into that right now, but we call it the why, which is a whole different talk. But when you look at that chart in there, I'm going to kind of outline some major ones. I always say start with the lowest one, factor 1. The easiest one is the one I put number 5, water intake. We have a very funny saying, I hope you heard me say it before, because I say it quite a bit, but the solution to pollution is dilution. I love that saying. I told you, I like those little things that rhyme, right? The solution to pollution is dilution. Okay, so why would you start with water? Water, again, makes up about 80% of our cells, so I'm not going to go too deep into that part of it. But when you create change in your body, there is a chemical construction or deconstruction having to happen, okay? If you change your diet, your body burns fuel differently. If you work out, you get excess burn from that. You have to realize lactic acid. We're all familiar with it, that burn, right? Water is one of the best solutions to that problem to push it back out. We shared that one time, Mike and I together. He's talking about just bumping up his water, and all of a sudden he's like, man, my joints do feel better. It's amazing on that side, you know? That little change, but how hard is it? And because I get pickled because people look at me and go, well, I don't like to taste the water.
I get bored with it.
All right, that's fine.
Because
That's fine.
I drink, that's almost all I drink. I don't drink soda, I don't drink coffee, I don't
Gotcha.
drink tea.
So number
So
one,
you're bored with it.
test your water. You can test it. I do recommend a whole house filter if you have the opportunity to get a whole house filter on your house. If you have the opportunity, they can run as cheap as the carbon one we have. I think it was like $300 to $400. I installed it myself, but you know, the Palmer for like $200, so it's not expensive. Every single piece of water in the house is filtrated. It looks like a little R2D unit sitting in your watershed, and it carbon filters it. It backflows every 14 days, which means that it actually, you can hear it running. It pulls the whatever debris in the carbon out. It's not the best recourse, but I found that the chlorine concentration in the Sourton municipal water was so bad, I'd come out looking like an old carrot. You know, like carrots? Yeah, that's what I would look like every time I took a shower. So I threw it on my house. I've had it on there for a while. I gotta change it actually. It's one of my things I have to do this year. But yeah, I do recommend that because again, the solution to pollution is dilution. So the more water you can put in, the more you can flush that stuff out. The other factor of it too, for all of us in here, again, as we go through some metabolic changes, that water has to basically, again, cleanse us for the most part coming back in through overall. Now, my hack for that, just so you guys have an idea, if the sleep becomes compromised, because remember when we do our sleep talk, we're gonna talk about the 3 Bs. The 3 Bs are what keep us up at night: brain, body, and bladder. I do have a 4th B, which one of my patients came in yesterday. She just had a baby about a month ago. The baby's on her list, so she's got 4 Bs, which is cool. And her 4th daughter too. Oof, 4 daughters. Vanna. Getting Vanna way back out there. I don't know. I thought Vanna was not even around anymore. She's around. They got Vanna. That's her name. Beautiful little baby girl. So anyway, so that water intake again is a crucial part of that. But now again, if it becomes part of a problem, meaning it's keeping up at night, then we have to put a solution to that. So what I recommend doing for water, if you're not a water intaker, number one is use any kind of like fruit to flavor it. You know, again, people think sometimes, again, yeah, you might get a little bit of calories out of a squirt of like lemon, but trust me, from a model of exciting your insulin, it's very low. Okay, so lemon, lime, orange, I don't care what it is. Just get in there because that's how valuable that water is from an absorptive standpoint. You're not going to have to worry about that part. The other misconceiving part of water is that things are dehydrators. When I drink a cup of coffee in the morning, 12-ounce cup of coffee, I drink 24 ounces of water with it. Now the reason why I do that is because that coffee is taking 12 ounces of my water right out of my system because it's dehydrated. Because what happens when you drink coffee? You gotta go to the bathroom, you know? So you're kind of pushing that right through, so you actually dehydrate yourself, so people forget that. So if you are doing the 8 ounces, but you're putting in sugary and or caffeinated beverages, you are gonna have to buffer that a little bit. What I do recommend is on Amazon, you can pick up a jug that actually has outlined on there, all 64 ounces, I guess it is, the ounces on the jug itself. I do recommend in the beginning, actually doing that in the beginning, just to get a general sense of what you have to do so you can time your bathroom breaks accordingly, because that is the retort I get, that I can't do it because I gotta sit at my desk. And I get that, but what you wanna do is you wanna play around with that ounces and say, hey, can I get a lot in the morning? And by the way, it's good, it's okay if you get a lot more in the morning ahead of time. It's like a sponge, it'll saturate. You'll saturate that out and then kind of let it sit there for a little bit, and then maybe take a couple of bathroom breaks, and then slowly titrate it as you go through the day, like just lower it down to the point where by 6 o'clock you're just maybe sucking ice cubes or little sips of water at dinner. Awesome way to do it. Typically it'll keep you away from the toilet, the 3 a.m. visit to the hopper for going to the bathroom, okay? So, which is nice on that side. But again, remember, caffeine, alcohol, big time dehydrator, okay, we know that obviously you put a couple drops of alcohol next to water, it evaporates the alcohol pretty quickly. It actually sucks it back in through. So again, if you're adding alcohol, one of my go-to trends for me as I cut back on my drinking is to match up every single 8, 12-ounce beer or drink with me. I do a glass of water with it, so I always order 2 at a time, 1 water, 1 beer, and go accordingly on that side of it. It just gets me to the point where I don't have to drink as many as I do on that side. But water, so if water's anywhere near below a 5, please put that higher up and start with that, because that little bit of you ordering a jug on Amazon and just going through the water intake part of it will start to build up the less stress in the body part of it. The next one's going to be on there is your sleep. Sleep's an important part. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put this, and you want to start it is the linchpin habit. If you can figure out your sleep, you can figure out so many more things, because it's the only thing on this list that actually changes the energy, money, time function. I said, remember, time, energy, money, we got to solve it. This is the only thing I found for me personally that gave me that time, was figuring out my sleep. Okay, now again, growing up and where I grew up at, my mom was a night owl. So there was a book called When by Dan Pink, and he talks about larks versus night owls. Some people are wired to be nighttime people. I'm a lark, so I tend to wake up a little bit and kind of get moving throughout my day. I'm okay on that side. My mom was more of a night owl, and I never really figured out till later in life. But what it drove me towards was having such miserable sleep between the hours, say 11 and 6 a.m. because you got to get for school to go to school. That's why I suffered mostly from an educational standpoint, because I didn't realize I was sleep deprived the whole entire time going through high school. Not her fault, just that's what we did back then in order to create a relationship for her and I. Now for me is the linchpin habit that I adapted to with my kids especially was all of my electricity, electronics, TVs, computers, everything gets shut off by 8:30 a.m. and I typically don't allow any of it in our bedrooms. So no TVs in your bedroom, no electronics as much as you can. But if you can find a way to get the electricity, the TVs off downstairs and into your bedroom, at least lying down and working towards like some postural stuff or laying there in your phone for a little bit, 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock, you're in a nice little sweet zone right there. Because what that does is on an 8-hour cycle, it's gonna put you anywhere between 5 and 6 a.m. to get up. Which most people, when I say that, like, oh my God, that's so early coming through. It is if you're going to bed at 11 or 12 o'clock. I'm gonna say that right now, it is. But if you can get that one habit down, what it opens up for us is that little sweet spot to where nobody in my fold at least is even attempting to get up at that time. You know, even when I had a dog, he wasn't even up yet at the time. You know, my kids definitely not. And so what I mean to you is that gives me why 1 to 2 hours to do what I have to do when it comes to my health. That's that one little linchpin. You stick it in there and that cog falls in place and you're like, lights, upstairs, bang, bang. I'm not that tired. And all of a sudden it's like 6, 8, or 5 a.m. You're like, whoa, kind of awake. I don't get up alarm clock, by the way, very rarely. Like today I was up at what, 5:30? And I had to get up by 6 for my other office to get over there by 7. So I was up out of bed and 5 o'clock, no alarm clock. Not bragging because I'm programming myself, well, we got to bed at a reasonable hour. If I do that, I'm fine, right? But that one time allowed me to go downstairs, pop on a cup of coffee. I opened up my, we're gonna go to it next, my stress management is I have a shared notes. I've shared, by the way, if you have an iPhone, it's an awesome feature. I recommend it for everybody. Start a power list. I got this from Andy Fasella, who's he's got a broadcast. I can't even say the name of the broadcast because it's got curse words in it. But anyway, he recommends creating a power list for yourself, which is basically you list 5 things you're gonna complete that day, every day, and complete them. Get confident with that. So you open up your notepad. I'm gonna steal that real quick. We'll go to that. But with my hour this morning, guess what I did? I opened up my phone. I made my coffee. I took my Theragun. I did my Theragun work, so I got my time in to work on what I tell you guys to do. I did my Theragun. I opened up my power list. It had me at the office. It had my talk today. We had a 1-year meeting for the office upstairs. We had a great year last year. And then I had to come here. I knew that. And so I was putting all the pieces together. I put a list out for Brian. I went to text Brian, hey, I got to text him, grab this. He set all this stuff up screen-wise. So I knew I was going to do it. I screwed this up. The only part I had to do myself, I screwed up. But anyway, that sleep is such an important part because it gives you that time to do that kind of part. And now I'm going to skip to the stress management part. Stress management is a really interesting part of our existence because it really comes down to perception. And it's such a hard thing to say since I dealt with mental illness in my family fold, bad mental illness in my family fold. But stress really does come down to a perceptional piece of how we perceive our existence. You know, it's very much like pain and pleasure too, which are both wired in the same ones. But a lot of it comes down to is when you put the time into it and you commit to yourself that time to work on yourself, reading books. And by the way, when I say read books, by the way, the majority of them are audibles. And the secret audible for me is I listen at 2x, just so you guys know. You guys know what 2x sounds like? It sounds like me right now, right? So people say, how can you do that? And I'm like, have you ever heard me talk? So if I can talk this fast, trust me, I can listen that fast. So I can do an 18-hour book in 9 minutes. I did the Arate, the Brian Johnson's book when I was on vacation at 2x. And he talks slow anyway, so it was a hack. I didn't like it. I don't remember it. Anyway, so here's what happens. That little ability now to create that power list in the morning gives you structure around things. You can do whatever you want. Make it small in the beginning. Make your bed. That's a great book too about making your bed. Every morning, make your bed. Find small wins so you feel accomplished for that day so you can start building on those, okay? What you're building on is, again, the consistency, the confidence, and then ultimately the conviction that you're going back in through. So with this list today, take this paperwork home if you like, just put on there, like, okay, well, my power list has to be towards, okay, I'm going to bed at 8:30. I'm turning my lights at 8:30 today. I'm going to lay in bed and see how I do. Read a book, please, because that usually puts me to sleep. Reading a book at night, it puts me right to sleep on that part. But again, make that power list in the morning. And again, what it does for you is that little bit of journaling allows you to perceive your reality differently, which is such a huge part of what we're going to go into next for a brief second, is exercise and nutrition. The most radical change we can do as a human creature is 2 parts. Number 1, change what we eat. Do you know how consistent our ancestors were with what they fed themselves? Like, they didn't walk into stores. We had the conversation today. Do you guys know that snacking only became popular in the past, 30 years we said? Mm-hmm. You know that, snacking, the industry of snacking? And you know the majority of Americans now only snack? They don't eat 3 meals anymore. And I'm not a big believer of 3 meals because that was set up by industrial society based upon the idea that you would fall out from a glucose drop at around noon. And so the business to be let you have a lunch to feed yourself, just so you know we're three times. I'm 1 meal a day sometimes, or I'm 4 or 5 meals, depends on what I'm doing. But yeah, the reality is that we live in a culture to where, again, we have to have that part set up because it's not structured for us in that sense. And so exercise and diet is the reason why you can't start there first. I'm not saying you don't do it, but you don't start there because your chances of succeeding, just like Ross and those guys, is not very high until you create the momentum, okay, the momentum factor. When it comes to exercise, again, exercise is very, very much tied to our innate. We are movement-based creatures. I often hear the idea, I think it was Einstein who said we only use 10% of our brain. which is complete fallacy because half the neurons in our brain are dedicated to movement, if not more. So we really use at least 50% of our brain, and then other ones, who knows on that side. But yeah, but if you get up and moving, there's another great book called Spark. It's about exercise in the morning on kids' brains. And they did a study out in Evansville, Indiana, which basically did a 5:30 a.m. CrossFit style class with these kids in an ADD type format. They have ADD, eradicated ADD in these kids. Gone. Yeah, amazing. But the kids hated it. Because getting up 5:30 in the morning was like, God, and stuff. But it just showed you, and he has some brain-based stuff you can do in the morning, and again, a whole other book to excite both sides of the hemispheres, good, great book to read. But again, that gives you that structure. So again, it's in the morning for me, it's my power hour. So my power list hour, where I actually list out the 5 things I want to accomplish. It's my chance to get back in and pop my earbuds in if I want to go for a walk on the treadmill, or go, right now I'm doing a treadmill in the garage because it's freezing cold outside, so I at least try to get some movement on that side. And then exercise. So I'm going to anchor back to exercise because again, it is the funny thing we started and we'll end with on that side is the idea with exercise. The biggest thing for me is that if you look up the word exercise in Webster's dictionary, it doesn't say joining a gym, just so you guys know, okay? It just says to challenge yourself in a different way so that you achieve something different. So there's kind of a verbiage in there, basically like you can have an exercise in music, you can have exercise in language, like you go and do something different, it makes you go to be different. So the reason I anchor back down to that is because the structure that we currently know as exercise has very much also been formatted to be corporate. So whether it's you joining Genesis or CrossFit or any one of those guys, recognize that you don't need much for exercise. Okay, I always start with that first. The absurdity for me is that everything you see in front of me is more than well enough to get me to a level of fitness that I would appreciate results. Isn't that weird? Like you don't hear that much. Like literally standing right now, I have everything that I need to be in 6 months from now in better shape than I am right now. Think about it, it's so weird. Like you're like, wait a second, what? Yeah, it's called bodyweight exercise. It's not that dramatic, right? But it's weird how we never think that sometimes. It's the same way like we don't think about like, the effects of alcohol in our system, sometimes we do it. So I was kind of anchor back down to the idea is that again, we have everything in our faculties to do what we have to do where we're at. The hardest thing with all of these when it starts out is the idea that again, it takes that effort, right? So again, it takes that energy capacity to kind of push it back out. When it comes down to the timing of those things, like I said, once again, most people say it's a time factor. Again, find that part of it. For me, the exercise part of it, where I start from, is until you get your sleep in line for 4 weeks, and if you just on your paperwork, you might jot it down, 30 days, 90 days. I want to set this out. I didn't put it in my notes because I was going to hold back on it, but I'm going to finish up on it. 30 days and 90 days. Okay, so whenever you commit to doing something different, you have a minimum of 90 days to do it. 90. So if you come ask me what bed to buy or what pillow to get, you have to buy one for 90 days. So if you're in the bed shopping department, buy one with best return policy because you need 90 days to make sure it fits for your body because it might hurt at the beginning, it could be great at the end, it might be terrible in the beginning and great at the end, who knows? It takes 90 days. If you go into a supplement, if you get sold on whatever, say Vitamin, vitamin D, what am I on now? The Long Jackie, what is that thing called? The testosterone supplement I'm doing now because Huberman Labs told me that we both listen to Huberman's lab. He's a PhD out of Stanford, and he's got this testosterone pill that he likes, and so I take half of it right now. I'm not doing a full thing. But at 48, I'm like, hey, I don't want to have to do anything else, but maybe supplement a little bit. But anyway, three months. Okay, so if you're buying anything, okay, if you commit to sleep, commit to what we just talked about today for at least 90 days. Okay, say I'm going to get on a schedule. Put in your phone's reminder. You can set Google Calendar reminder. I used to do it back in the day, and it still goes off sometimes. It will say eat at 5 a.m. because I forgot to leave that one marker. I just remind myself to eat when I was back in my lifting heavy CrossFit days. But I want you to commit to that part of it. And 30 days. 30 days is what you saw with Ross and those guys. Okay. Every gym, every process typically has a 30-day out. Okay. If what you're doing is not working in 30 days, have a moment with yourself. Okay. Look in the mirror. Ask yourself. Get naked and look in the mirror. Always a good motivator for most people. Just saying, if you want to really do it the right way. But look at yourself in the mirror and just say, where am I at with this? Okay, because it might not be congruent for you, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up, because that's what I saw with ResNOlutions, by the way. When those guys came in and they wanted to quit the gym, I saw the shame. That's a terrible feeling, just so you guys know. You guys know that one of the worst things you never feel as a human is shame, and the worst thing you ever do to a human is blame. You ever hear that before? It's terrible for the body. I mean, mentally, it just eats our soul and our gut. So you don't want that shame. So how you set it up is you set yourself up with a 30-day metric. They say 21 days to create a habit. But I will tell you right now, you're not going to be perfect possibly in 21 days. So I'm going to give you 30. And during that 30 time, if you can look at yourself, like I said earlier, and you're doing it consistently 5-6 times a day, and you feel like there's some growth going towards that, again, and when I say growth, I mean internal growth, not external, like you can see it and or feel it on a scale, then you're on the right track. If you're not, then take a step back and say, let me try a different angle here, and don't beat yourself up and try something new. Because the unfortunate part is the majority of people that work through resolutions quit on themselves because of what happened with those resolutions. They stopped believing in themselves, they stopped creating hope for themselves, you know what I mean? Worst case scenario, just jump back in here for a talk every month with us. I'll kind of get you back on that path a little bit, but again, that's what it kind of comes back down to, and that's actually what I'm going to finish up on. Real quick on the whoopee part of it, I'm running out of time. I'm be reserved that time, about an hour with you guys. I like this. I'm still working through it, and as I studied Whoop more, I started to realize it was more of a framework than anything else. So what I mean by a framework is, it says on here, wish, outcome, obstacle, plan, okay? So each morning now, what I'm working on personally is in my 5 stress points is, what am I working towards on that? What is my outcome I'm looking for? So when I wake up and we're designing out the programs with Brian, him and I do a lot of back-end work early in the morning with the technology. My outcome is that I want to create a life-changing program for one person. That's it, one person. If one person jumps on that app and they change their lives, I feel better about myself. I go, hey, that's pretty cool. That's my outcome. My obstacles is, it's like learning Latin. You ever learn Latin? I have it. It's really difficult to learn. It's a dead language, okay? This isn't just a dead language, but it's like 4 dead languages tied together, all trying to come out with common sense. And that's what him and I deal with sometimes, trying to match up like what auto flows are. Just so, and Katya laughed at me today, what was that, Saturday? You came home and you're like, what did you do all day? Was it Saturday, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, talking to the AI all day.
Yeah, I was on the couch. You know what I did all day? Chat GPT 4.0 for 8 hours. You guys know what Chat GPT is? It's AI, it's artificial intelligence. It's scary how interesting it is. It wrote out a 90-day nutrition program for me in the way format I wanted to, because I told it what I want to do. First off, I had to introduce myself to the computer. I literally told him who I was. Fitness expert, blah, blah, blah. I'm assertive, but also soft, guy for recommending. It spit out a 90-day fitness program, or a nutrition program for me. Pretty scary, pretty scary. It's something I wasn't even thinking about. I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. So it's really interesting how it can do that. It took me 8 hours because I'm still learning the nuances of it. But again, that's kind of the person that I am, kind of jump into that part of it, but again, that distraction side of it. But what happens on that side is, that's part of my obstacle part, is being able to go, hey, what am I trying to learn in this process? And you want to do that sometimes, because the question part from her was, as a partner, she was, what'd you do all day? I'm like, come here, let me show you, remember? I walked over and I'm like, look, it's a 90-day program, it's so cool. But one thing about it is, when you read through it, you can tell it's written, and that's one thing I'm going to encourage every one of you in here, that AI will become more of a part of our lives in the next 10 years. We just have to recognize the limitations of it when it comes to interacting with it. I did hear that, I know the major insurance companies are now using artificial intelligence for reviewing our notes. It's only been a matter of time before we're put on with an artificial intelligent voice to get a recommendation for a drug. That's kind of that's my thought process. Eventually, it's going to be where you do a consultation with a virtual doctor on a thing, about 5-10 years on that side. And the last one is your plan. So the most important part of today was coming up with the idea that, again, I want you to leave out here with a kind of an idea as far as what your plan looks like. I want you to start low, like I told you, and again, the reason I start there is because, again, I told you too much time people overshoot what they want to do. In one of these areas that's next to here, that's a low number, I want you to put down, again, the linchpin part. I hope it's sleep or water. The water one's easy, just go buy that big ounce jug just so you get a framework of what it's going to do. And we talked earlier, Mike and I, about the idea of measuring out your food. What a pain in the ass. You guys ever did that before, measure out your food? It's a really good tool to do it, by the way, for 2 weeks. Measure out your food, just so it gives you a general idea of actually how close it matches up to the whole hand idea. You guys might know that, hope, right? So carbohydrates, proteins inside your palm, and then your thumb's fat. But do that, because when you measure those foods out, which I did with the zone diet with Barry Sears' work, was using 40-30-30 cut, so you had real specific amounts of grams of something to get in. Do that because it gives you framework of the work of what you're looking like going forward with nutrition, so this is a good one. The water would serve the same, and like I said, tonight the sleep one's an important one. We'll have a talk on sleep. If you are a bad sleeper, just let me know. We'll get you back to one of our workshops on that side. What I'm going to leave you with, guys, for that part, and again, Terry's already kind of a part of that. This is a funny one we used to close on in corporate all the time. And again, back to that common sense. Does anybody know what the mirror cabinet on the bathroom wall is called?
Medicine
Yeah, medicine cabinet. Have you ever thought to yourself, why do I have a medicine cabinet in my room, in my house at all? By the way, we don't have one in our house at all. Cool.
No, we didn't.
I know, but and it's obviously called it's a medicine cabinet. But my question came down to me is, who wants to be live 79? I used to start out with this one because people, it was amazing to me, especially in a corporate setting. I would ask, before we start this conversation, how many people here want to live to be 79? In a room of like 30 people, how many people think you raise your hand out of a room of 30 people?
Everybody.
None, about 3 or 4. Yeah, is that sad? Now, we're talking about corporations with kids that are 30, 40 years old, but a majority of, and what I'm saying with hope of you guys in here is that 79 is not old, just so you guys know. I hope you guys all can agree with that. It is the life expectancy of the average American, which by the way has gone down, and what does motivate me to get up in our community and take my time out to come talk with you guys, because I think that's an atrocious thing to see happen in our time, because it's not gonna be better for our kids. Like my humble belief, and I think what
Life
after,
expectancy is going down.
it's going down. Yeah, it's going to go down more, and it's because of, again, what we talked about today, it's not because of a lack of medicine or that, it's because of just the framework that we work under right now. It's just not conducive to health. We want to change that. So who's we got? 79. I absolutely was, by the way, like I said, my mentors are guys like Jack Lane, which, not good, he was a chiropractor, which is kind of interesting. So he was a chiropractor just to make more money selling juicers. So we kept with that. This one's through. So what we offer up, what we're going to offer up, and again, I know a lot of you guys, you're part of this program already, you guys are part of the practice. As we develop out this space down here, this is going to be a funnel from chiropractic into here to get you to another level that will support what I do in here, because Brian's connected to me with all of our exercise part. We're trying to work on how we can do it legally overall. By the way, this is set up as a chiropractic entity, this business model down here, so it is covered by like HSAs and FSAs, like if you're using your health savings accounts, you can use it towards here because we do have it set up as that. My eventual goal is to probably onboard another chiropractor so I can actually kind of have a dual kind of enrollment kind of idea for me. But my point being is that what I developed out with you guys with your exercise programs is truly my passion. It's something I brought to the chiropractic profession that I still lecture on when I'm out like in Scottsdale, is a model more towards dentistry for chiropractors. I feel like every chiropractor needs to educate a patient on how to brush and floss their spine, and it's a missing link. You know, ironically enough, wearing these braces, I know what the potential benefits are out there. But Brian's that extension for me in here because I want to build on that, because when you do those exercises, that's like learning the alphabet again. That's literally what I do with those exercises. That walking lunge you're doing is like a sentence in a book, okay? It's one part of a structure what we can create. The broken down parts of the hip bridges and the hip openers and the thing on your hip, all of those are like alphabet letters. I'm just saying, hey, you're missing those letters. Let's put them back in so you can build on that next level. Brian is my book writer. He's going to be the one, and I saw this because like I told you, when I was with Dane's practice, it was a huge practice, 3 personal trainers, 4 chiropractors. Those trainers did such magic with what we were able to get them into. It was amazing to see that because they anchored back to hope on that side because he was perpetuating that. So I would say, what I do is segmental movement, what Brian does is global movement. So I move a segment, Brian goes, whoa, that thing's moving a lot better. I like how that works on that side. So really what it comes down to is just trying to get the brand and the understanding out of what we offer up. So what we start out with, guys, just so you're familiar, and Terry went through this already, you guys are both more than willing to come down here for it, is what we call an NSI, which stands for No Sweat Introduction. It's just a chance for you to come down here and get with Brian. You're at least going to leave out of here with a general idea of what your body composition looks like and a little bit more, hopefully, goals on that side. He's going to go through a very structured wants and need analysis. The other part that's exciting is that we are going to blend our high touch. I did a horrible job editing the picture, but I was just doing quick the other day. But we actually do have an app now developed out. My phone right here.
Your phone is filming.
Oh, is it filming? Okay, keep it. In our phone. Now, do you have the app? Yeah, is our logo on there? Oh, I'm so geeky. So we actually we worked out with a company that we are able to now brand our own app. We don't have it in the store yet, so you actually get it from us. So we're sponsored by a company called Everfit, which is a Latin thing we're figuring out in the back end, trying to plug things together. We actually do have our own customized app. So like if you looked in the store, it pulls out on there. And then what was cool about me was it gave us the ability to put the logo on our Android and app phones. So when you do the update, after you download from Everfit, it pops up our logo, which I'm a geek. I'm like, oh my God! Me and I are like texting back and forth. So cool! But that's just part of it on that side. But what's cool about that is we're developing out a part where we're going to try to start, we're not going to try, we're going to incorporate a lot of the social cueing that I saw that got people successful using CrossFit models. But I saw the downside of CrossFit too, that's why I don't have them anymore, because there were certain parts of CrossFit that expanded into very much specialization, be good at CrossFit, but it would also equate to bad joints, bad necks. That's why I got rid of it. I literally, my New Hope gym, we were talking about today at a meeting, I could be adjusting a patient and I hear a person over here doing butterfly kick pull-ups, you know, cranking through a workout, and we were tied together. That's how close I was into that process. And what I realized for me is what I wanted to bring was my own reiteration about what fitness can be. And I think it's the best framework for fitness, but I think it just got too far to the competitive side. But this app is going to incorporate some of those components. The biggest part of CrossFit for me was the community aspect. One of the things I sucked at for the past 3 years as I developed out this practice was making community for you guys out of that practice, because I'll be honest with you guys, I love being a chiropractor, but really it's a tool for me to go to another level for you guys, just so you understand where that's coming from. And my mission has always been that I want to see people off that table get healthier and come back with stories like that lady who lost 40 pounds. We're having one conversation because I know what miracles can happen. But I wanted to create a reservoir, and that's what this is going to be for us. That app is going to be an extension of our high-tech approach, where we are actually on the back end has a Facebook-like feature, but it's off the Facebook web. It's only going to be for our active people on the app. That's going to hopefully branch into, we're having conversations about doing like, go for a walk with the docs, and just go to, walk, bring family members, go for a walk, and she's a pediatric doctor. She's going to talk to you about child's health, and we're trying to do all we can do for that to bring that culture, because I saw what both can do. I saw what chiropractic can do, and Dr. Sandy was a great example of that. If you guys remember Dr. Sandy, she was a great example of what chiropractic could do. But then I saw what fitness could do for a person too. And I was like, I gotta go to this. I can't, and I was really just into the chiropractic side because I'll be honest with you guys, out of COVID when I bought this practice, I had to get it back to being functional. Just at a level where it wasn't making any income that I had to go, hey. And last year was a good year, and you guys are a good net benefit of that. I feel like we're bringing a good product to the area. But this part here is going to be the next really focus for us, is to go, hey, let's get this community growing. And the cool part about this model for you guys to know is we're keeping at a price point to where personal training was the best driven model because you had such attention. But the problem I told you earlier, you turn into a psychologist, plus the cost of personal training goes up and up and up. We use semi-private, which keeps it affordable for the person in a sense where it's economically there. But the other part is it is semi-private where you're connected. And that's the cool part about the app too. And by the way, tonight when you guys leave, if you guys want access to it, just let me know next visit in. I'll get you free access to it for 30 days. We can deliver workouts on the phone, which is remarkable for me. We're actually going to work with a technology company, and hopefully next 6 months we're working through it. They're actually going to be able to do almost like a Peloton-esque back end for us, where we actually have videos we can drop in, like you want to do yoga, or if you can't show up for a workout, you get an actual video of a yoga class at Peloton. So I think that's kind of the next technology jump for me, is because we both do, she does more than I do, the online stuff, but we're both driven, and we both can go, oh, let me try this one. It's not going to kill me. Most people get intimidated. I'm like, I don't know what I should do. So we're going to try to build that into our processing. So it's called a hybrid model. But I want to say thank you guys. It was good to get back out here again. Like I said, this really does fill me inside of here. When it comes down here, like I said, I love what I do up there. When I get down here with you guys, it's that part that goes, hey, someone might learn something different and does one thing different, and then in 10 years come back and go, I heard you say that one thing. I really was on that side. Any questions from you guys, what I covered? I always try to cover a little bit. I know it's kind of an open setting, but any questions, concerns on that side? Our next talk is going to be I think it's the 20th of February, so it's going to be after Valentine's Day. We're going to try to keep these closer to the end of the months. The next one is, like I said, our heart health. We are going to have we're trying to work through some of the benefits of the app. We're going to start a walking challenge, just so you know, February 1st. It does connect, by the way, to all of your wearable technology. So it has like Apple Fitness, it has all that stuff on there. So like I saw your stats popped up, which is good. We are going to talk about some of the effects of what walking can do for us. We are also going to be doing a free ebook on pace training, so like interval-based training for running. Because as we work back into the springtime, I want people to kind of understand like how you get work back into a natural, better running style. Because I treat a lot of plantar fasciitis. I don't even say the word. You guys know what plantar fasciitis is? Yeah, don't get it, please. Okay. If you get it, come see me. I'll get rid of it pretty quickly for you. But most likely you're not going to get it because your hips actually work. That's why you get plantar fasciitis. But for you guys, that walking challenge will start February 1st. We'll run through it. We actually have a leaderboard in the back end, which you can go into the forum and see where you're at ranked. It's so cool. Like I said, it's funny because we're like so infantile, and it's not quite there yet, and we're trying to get into that model where we're like, oh, cool, it's on there. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to become just a regular kind of app. That's where the high touch component with having the workshops here, the meetings ups, whether it's going to be going to Founding Fathers, and we'll go over and we'll do usually a bike ride through the back end of the trails down to like Collegeville, have a beer, come back, have a beer in New Hope. Like I want to get like you guys out on that. Like that's my vision eventually, is having people come join us on that part. Just because it's what I saw work to keep people sticky. That bottom one down there, when I work back and through, it's having that group. It's having that like-minded thought process that kept people involved on that side. And again, that's one of the bigger pictures overall. So I appreciate you guys coming down. Thank you very much. I wish we'll work all this technology stuff out. Like I said, I was not anticipating being in New Hope this morning at 6:45 a.m. doing what I was doing. But again, that's what the snow does sometimes. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you very much. Again, there's waters back there if you want to grab one. That's fine.